everybody. How's it going this week? Well, it's the first weekend of 2020 and the first episode of 2020. So I've taken all my old episodes off my hard drive and stuck it in a hard drive and put it on something and cleaned the laptop off. That's what I always do every year, just to have backup copies in case YouTube decides to go silly. Did the old New Year cleaning, putting all the things in a year folder and getting the new year on the way. Many people do these whole New Year resolution things of what are they going to do for the new year. Obviously, I have a list of things I would like to do. I do like an article that I read that you should have a theme for the year. Like what, instead of going for a particular goal, what's your theme going to be for the year? What's the like basically like focus or drive or like just like make it one word. Give that year a word and try to go live your life around that sort of word. Whatever you decide to do. Um, Maybe you would want to be more charitable, but you guys were already pretty charitable already, particularly in 2019. 2019, there has been a video that was released by one Thabo and Meerkat and Dixie Lioness, who thankfully put together a 15-minute video basically just listing off all the individual events in the furry fandom that occurred in 2019, along with the amount that they had raised for the particular charities that they were going to be doing this week. You can see a click to that video up in the link up in the description above. So I found that video very fascinating and very interesting, despite it being a very simple video. It, to most people, would be just, oh, it's just a list of conventions and how much they donated. But you can get a lot of information from numbers and statistics like that. I very much like primary resources like that. Funnily enough, when I heard somebody say, "Oh, the furry fandom had donated over $1 million to their respective charities in 2019," I went to WikiFur to sort of try to find the sort of charities things, and unfortunately, it looks like WikiFur was not really updated with that information quite often. Unfortunately, I think the wiki phase of the fandom is sort of moving away. Some people might say that's a good thing. Other people might say that's a bad thing. I think having primary sources is a good thing. Though Wikipedia and wiki-style sites aren't technically primary sources, the useful thing that you can do it, and at least when I was in college, Wikipedia was like a brand new thing when I was in college. It was the brand new spanking thing. And it's kind of funny. It makes me feel how old I am. And like all the professors will be like, "Don't use Wikipedia. It's not a good source. It's not a primary source." Sort of like those bars in the world right now that are trying to ban cell phones. They're like, this is not how you socially interact. Electronic devices. Get those robots out of here. You, yeah, you. This thing is evil. Get it out. Get it out of here. I'm not going to throw it because I don't want to buy a new one. I don't make money off of YouTube, so I don't have the budget to throw my cell phone across the room. Maybe that should be a goal for my new year, but I don't think so. I'm fine with how I am. As far as that goes. I don't have any subscriber goals that can sail off. Primary resources. Such as the video above, are very, very useful. And I'm very glad to see that it's gotten a good amount of views. Typically, primary information like that typically doesn't get a lot of views. I think it's gotten about as many views as like my most popular video on my channel. So I'm glad to see that they had gotten, have gotten such recognition for that. And I hope that will continue to happen because taking the time to put together those numbers like that couldn't have been easy. Putting it together in a formatted video like that with decent production value, certainly not easy. And I'm glad that they're being rewarded for that. I watched the 15-minute video and put together a spreadsheet of that information, and I will have a link in the description below where you can view it. There's a lot of interesting things that you can learn about, like how the furries gather money and different things. I also have a flavor article on it and a link to the description below that you could read along. And if you can't hear it too well, you'll be able to read along with it. I think that's one of my big New Year's resolutions when it comes to my content, is to try to write out a version of the thing I'm presenting and then present it. For one, that'll make my my videos a little better, I think. And for number two, for those who are hard of hearing, and I don't have like the closed captions, it'll be sort of like as if I were talking to you, only you'll probably get a lot more better experience because it'll be much more concise and to the point and without all these ramblings. So, anyways, so what can we learn about the charitability of the furry fandom and that? Interestingly enough, what I learned is that there are basically two types of organizations. There's the convention and there is the fundraising. Like particularly a fundraiser event. Obviously, a fundraiser event has the strength that its sole purpose is to raise funds for a particular cause, whereas a convention is other expenses that go along with it: travel, room and board. Parking if you're traveling that way. I guess that's part of travel. Food, and basically swag if you're getting art or drawings or like items, right? So if you're getting those things, if you are acquiring that, if you're paying money towards those things, a person may not have as much money to donate to the charitable event. So I thought, well, I did see a lot of good in those things. I saw like Boozy Badger, I saw Sonic Fox, and personalities like that doing fundraiser streams for ALS and for what's it called, the Taylor Project, the Trevor Project. There it is. It's like T. His name starts with a T. The Trevor Project. So they have those two, and they rose money for that. And their money, the amount of money they rose during their events, were pretty high. They were above $20,000 a piece, which is pretty high up there in event wise as far as like final dollar value. That's up there with some of the larger conventions that we have. So, but it does show that a lot of money is starting to be raised. It's actually about 17.5% of the money that was raised in 27.5 or 17.5% of the fiscal dollars raised of that over $1 million was from a fundraiser specifically, either from an event that people get together in a local community to do things, or mostly by streaming. And I think as streaming becomes a medium that becomes a lot more prevalent. I do streams every Friday night here, but they're more for furry games and exploring furry games than fundraising. But there is that prevalent thing where people will be fundraising via streaming. But then you got fur cons, which account for 82.45% of the money raised, which shows that fundraising is starting to become more of is starting to hold its hand. But the funny thing is that when you look at the events and the number of events that were on Mr. Meerkat and Ms. Lioness's video, is that they had accounted for a total of 82 events. And of those 82 events, 66 were furry conventions and 14 were for fundraisers. And for that's the percentage of events is like really close to the percent raised, which blew my mind because those two numbers, they have nothing to do with each other. It might look like they're correlating with each other, but really those two numbers have nothing to do with each other. So interestingly, right now it's that one might think that fundraisers would have an edge on conventions because of all those expenses that I stated earlier. But it turns out that the amount of money being raised by these events as a percentage is about the same as the money that they raised as a percentage. So basically, it's a draw. It's almost a physical, literal draw. Because you could have had like 90% of the money raised by fur cons and 80% being that. These are independent variables. The fact that they're so close together is kind of like extremely weird. In fact, it was so weird that when I was making my spreadsheet, I was like, did I do the formulas right? And then I had to check, and I like looked really close, and I was like, yeah, no, the formulas are right. So that's kind of amazing. My guess is because at a convention, when you're at a convention, the charity has an opportunity to sort of put their foot forward, sort of engage with people as they're going around the convention. And the convention's sort of a captive audience. Some people might go in not expecting to give money to charity, but they end up giving money to charity. So like there's an audience that might not know that they wanted to give to this organization, but then they end up giving to that organization. Whereas in a fundraiser, like you may have like advertising that the fundraising event is going on. Somebody might not know it, right? It's on the internet when you're talking about streaming, particularly, you might not know of certain things because they might not be advertised very well. And like myself here, I don't advertise very well. So not a lot of people find my channel and not a lot of people find my streams. But, they, you know, they happen. Those events happen. And luckily, Thabo and Dixie were looking into that and making sure these things are getting recorded. It sounds like they're going to be recording things this year because Adler the Eagle already had his Flappy New Year, and he raised money, $13,000 for those kids. And those are not that $13,000 is not included in this number. That's going to be included in the 2020 numbers. And I think though that as the furry fandom understands of online fundraising and streaming become more popularized, I suspect that while the numbers were even this year, I suspect that the fundraising stream totals might start pulling away from the furry conventions as a proportion of these things. Another interesting thing that was found out is the Midwest Fur Fest had the highest amount raised at one event, obviously, because it's the largest furry con we have in the world. Currently, they said they had 11,000 attendees. I'm sort of holding. I normally, as some people know, I do statistics on convention growth on this channel. I'm going to hold off until they do a follow up. I think that the 11,000 was a preliminary number. Because they were more worried about getting people's badges out, and their efforts of doing it were much more effective this year than they were last year. They did have some rough and tumble things happen on Thursday, but on Friday, like I arrived at the line at MFF on the same time on Friday and on Thursday, or Fridays on this year, or sorry, in 2019 and 2018, I arrived at about the same time at the line. And I got out much quicker this year by like an hour or two. So it was definitely much more streamlined. There's little kinks that they'll work out to hopefully get the thing ball rolling on Thursday a little bit better. But obviously with logistics, it's like your volunteers might not have showed up yet because it's Thursday and not Friday. Things like that. I won't hold it against them too much as long as they keep figuring out ways to do it better. I think that they did do good this year with the attendee thing, but that's not what this topic is about. We're talking about the charity. So for that 11,000, which is as I said, I think is a preliminary number, they had $220,000. I believe it was. I'm going to cheat now. I'm going to look at the next picture here. Yeah, it was $220,000. But the caveat here is that from what was announced is that $220,000 was from somebody, a very generous anonymous donor, donating $110,000 to match what was donated by the attendees. So technically, the attendees rose $110,000, and that $110,000. By the way, that $110,000 donation was basically the big one that kind of brought us above the $1 million point. The total that was raised for the year was $1,109,000. So even if that person who donated the 110,000 donated like 1,000, we would have hit the $1 million. But of course, that's only the charities that we know about, and that were recorded on the video in the cards. So let's talk about the per nose. Now, the cool thing about the video too is that it shows how much was raised per nose, which means per attendee. Obviously, for the fundraising events, they could not do that because like it's streaming and things like that, so you don't really have statistics on that. Though, if streamers want to cooperate with Dixie, or Dixie and Thabos are going to be concentrating on this, having, contacting the creators, say, do you know what the highest, arrival rate was for the stream? They can go, well, this is the max number of people that showed up. Though, obviously, that's not really an official count because people can come, they can go, they can leave, they can enter as the same as, people leave at different times and enter at different times. And there's no real great way to get the number of people who attend a streaming event, unfortunately. You can get the number of donators, but then again, that would artificially inflate the fundraisers per nose cost average because, like 1,000 people could attend a fundraising stream, and only 100 of them donate, money. And if you only count the ones that donated money, then you're basically infringing the thing. Because same with here, with Midwest Fur Fest, you could have 11,000 people attend and show up, and like a handful, maybe 3,000 of them don't donate any dollars. Yet there's $0 is accounted for in the average of per nose here. So it's like logistically and statistically, it's really difficult to get those kind of things. But for furry conventions, it's not too difficult to get that figure, because furry conventions typically, not all the time, but typically take an attendee count. So with those numbers, you can figure out who are the most generous per capita, basically. We have for the top four here. I know Midwest Fur Fest was a big popularized one because they raised $220,000, and that was quite a huge amount. And a lot of people were like, "Wow, that's crazy, right?" So of the $1 million, it's like almost 25% of the donations, right? If you think about it, if you have $1 million, if the donations, total was $1 million, you have 250,000 is 25%. So it's over $1 million. So it's probably in and around like 21% of the donations this year, of the charitable donations this year, came in from Midwest Fur Fest, of the final total. I don't know what the actual percentage is, but that sounds about right. It's less than 25, but probably greater than 20. So what we have here, though, shows that while Midwest Fur Fest had that much percentage, had that much dollars coming in, they weren't the most generous per person. And that goes to Western PA Furry Weekend, which is a convention, or like sort of camp sort of style convention that takes place near Pittsburgh. It's basically takes place in the fall, and it takes place at a sort of glamp grounds kind of thing. It takes place at a sort of a campground style kind of place, but it's like, I think it's cabin-esque. It's not like roughing it. It's like, if Strangelove would say something, my friend Strangelove would call it glamping, even though it's not really glamping. Glamping is like, I don't know. He heard the term, and he's like, yeah, that's glamping. It's them going in the cabins like that. It's like, that's not roughing it. That's not being out in the wilderness. It's like, yeah, I know, but that's not glamping. Glamping is literally buying these like bubble things and like literally having like taking your living room and sticking it in the forest, right? It's like, let me take my entire living room and my TV, my video games, and my lights and my lanterns, and let's like take all that stuff and then find a way to plug it in out in the wilderness, right? And have like a nice soft bed. That's technically what glamping is. Like cabin's sort of like, it's not quite roughing it. I can understand, but anyways, those definitions and that weirdness aside, um, Furry Weekend Atlanta, or Furry Weekend Atlanta, they're not on this list. They donated about $50,000 this year. Western PA Furry Weekend was the most giving per person at $32.37. And by the way, that is by a large margin. That's like way above average. Like the average, by the way, if you are ever wondering, it's like if I'm donating to charity at a convention, what's the average that I should be donating? It looks like $10 per person is usually the average rate. So if you want to donate to the cause, but not, you're like, well, I don't want to break my bank and I want to enjoy myself. $10 is a solid amount. It seems that a lot of like the averages seem to come out. In the spreadsheet, you will actually have the actual dollar figures. It's like the high $9 range. I have it at the bottom. So you have First Squared. So interestingly, like that's not a. By the way, that's also not a hotel convention. The top one. So like obviously there's not as it's probably not as pricey for room and board and all that. I don't know about food and any of that. Like that really depends on place to place. South Africa also not a hotel convention. It's good to see a foreign convention one up an American one in charitability. Theirs was at $23.59 a nose. They didn't have too many noses though, so they only had to donate $1,226.43 to charity to hit like the most generosity per person. Interestingly enough, when I know when Furthermore first came around, like its donations were too high, but also its expected count was not too high either. Like it really like grows as your conventions grow. Like the amount of money you donate obviously grows, but this average per person actually makes it so that it's very fair. Of course, that you could have like a furry convention of one person and they donate like $100,000 and go, ha ha! I'm the most charitable convention. I am a convention of one. Ha ha ha! That gets a little ridiculous though. It's like, why did you only have one person show up to your convention? But anyways, silly people. I expect a furry to do that. They're gonna be like, I'm gonna have a convention of one person and I'm donating $100. There, I'm the most charitable person convention in the world because I have one person at it. I'll make my own convention. the I'm the most charitable convention. Oh, that's horrible. But yeah, no, I mean it's more better when things are genuine than it's actually going to an actual place. First Squared. That one is a hotel convention. And you're like, well, how did that one be more charitable? Their convention their convention chair's name is Alkali Bismuth, and that's all I need to say. For any of you who are not aware who Alkali Bismuth is, if you've ever been to a convention, there's a panel called Whose Line, and he's this big guy, even compared to me. He's a little bit taller than me, and he's a little bit chubbier than me. But he is also sort of dapper as he wears a top hat, and he goes, "Guys, we're gonna play Whose Line Is It Anyway?" He's really loud. He doesn't need a microphone to fill the room with volume. And because he doesn't need a microphone to fill the room with volume, and I'm talking about big rooms. I'm not talking about like a small panel room, right? I'm talking about like stage rooms or like things like that. He can go without a mic and like be loud, be presentative, very very outspoken, very loud, but also very generous and very charitable and very like pushes for charitability and giving and things like that. And that sort of leadership in being charitable, being giving, obviously bleeds down um, to the conventions that he runs and everything else. So the fact that the one that he is chairing, right, is so charitable, isn't too surprising. Um, but it's very cool to see that. But I also noted he chairs that one, but he also works with a lot of other conventions in the Midwest. He's from the Chicagoland area, so like he does a lot of stuff in the Midwest. But he also travels around with a lot of the bigger, like a lot of the conventions around the country, and does his improv show, which is the Whose Lion Is It? Um, Basically, he allows the audience to participate in all these skits and things like that. Um, there's But I noted that a lot of the conventions in that general area, in the Midwestern area of the United States, despite how hard hit the Midwest has been in economically, it's not the most affluent area of the country. Compared to like some place like Los Angeles or New York City. Um, you know, those even though those places are far more affluent, um, it shows that the area people in the area are still very giving when they're given the right circumstances, to have people inspired to do so. Um, because a lot of the conventions in that area were above the average, right? I said the average of donations per nose was about $10, and if you look at the conventions within that general area, they usually fell above average. Whether it be like $13 or $18 a nose or $13 a nose. And I would like to think that like because Alkali works with a lot of those conventions, that his leadership style of generosity bleeds off to other people, which in turn bleeds off to other people, and it really is a cycle, and it helps with that. Obviously, he's a very humble person too, so he would tell me he would probably respond to that going, "Hey, it takes a whole community to bring together that amount of money. He works hard to do it, but there's a lot of other people that work hard to do it too, and the people who give are the most important, right? The people who are giving their money to these charities to help them out in their time of need are the people who deserve the most praise, because he can fling his hat around all he wants, but if people aren't donating money, they're not donating money. But anyways, um, in 2020, if you go to a convention, be sure to have at least have a $10 bill around, and go ahead and donate it to your convention's charity, particularly local convention's charity. Maybe in 2020, your convention will be on the list of most giving conventions. You don't have to donate $100,000 like that one crazy guy did. Every dollar counts, because you know every dollar made the furry fandom get to the $1 million of charitability in 2020. But also, as an important note, I would like to add, if you are going to a convention and you are like at a thing where it's like you're fiscally on the edge, and you don't want to overextend yourself, but you want to enjoy yourself at the convention. Um, but your future is uncertain and things like that. Don't feel guilty if you can't donate to any of the conventions there. You know, your presence there brings other people in. It's sort of a law of gravitational pull, right? The more people show up, then the more people who know that person might show up, and those people might be more apt to donate. It's a community process, and we as a community, I think, would rather, if somebody is very close to fiscal catastrophe, not to overextend themselves, and then having to you know when you reach that point where you break, having to go online and go, hey, I need help, right? And because you accidentally gave too much at the time where you shouldn't, it's very important to know that, don't feel like you're selfish if you have to, scrap some money together, and don't have enough to give out to others. Um, the people who should feel guilty are the people who have a lot of money and don't do it, right? If you don't have a lot of money and you can't give to the charity, don't feel guilty about it. I think that's an important thing to say, an important reminder in the furry fandom, particularly when you see those numbers. You're like, oh man, we're gonna make 2 million next. We're gonna donate 2 million next year. How about 5 million? It's like, okay, guys, don't get too crazy, right? Um, as a community, we got to make sure that we have the ability to sustain, the way we live, and to be able to help ourselves if we get into trouble. And having that nest egg and safety net is important for individuals as well. Um, which I'll probably go over in future episodes or future videos, maybe on another channel about fiscal stuff, which is one of my goals this year. But until then, thank you guys very much for watching and donating to charitable causes in 2019. We hope to see that again in 2020. And also as in one last note, the ALS situation. ALS, of that $1 million ish that we donated, the over $1 million, approximately 8% of it was to the ALS Foundation, dealing with the Tony Barrett thing, which is I'll have a card up there for that particular video where Tony Barrett had passed away. Dog Bomb is known, and had passed away due to ALS, which is a terminal neurological disease. It's a thing that just makes your muscles stop functioning over time. Your muscles and the nerve responses about your muscles decay or something. I'm not a doctor, but it's the thing that Stephen Hawking had. There's more information in that older video. And there was a fear, like ALS Foundation knows that the furries are very helpful with this. There's a kind of a fear from Tony's friends that people will forget over time. But unfortunately, Mark Sparks released a video recently that shows that even though we think that we're going to forget ALS over time and stop donating to them as much, unfortunately ALS is still an issue, and it's still a disease that is impacting people within the furry fandom, the people and the loved ones of people in the furry fandom. As Mark Sparks had released a video indicating that his father was diagnosed with it in 2019. So look, I'm pretty sure that there will be a charity event for raising funds and for the continue the fight against ALS and research, probably in honor of Mark Sparks' dad, as well as hopefully that's it. Hopefully there's no other furries or people who in the furry fandom know that will be impacted by the disease. But as long as that disease keeps impacting people, you can rest assured that furries will probably be raising money for that particular organization. Anyways, that about covers everything. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the content, kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section. I'm not going to ask you how much you donate or anything like that, or if you like charities or not. Like, that's your business. My personal feelings on charity is that you give to charity, not to brag that you give to charity. And even though the furries are going to be already do it that way, like I think sometimes furries might do it that way, where they're like, "Yeah, we donated $1 million to charity in 2019. Suck it, everybody. See, we're not evil people." So that's not what you do charity for. You do charity to help out other people. You don't expect people to give you a pat on the back. Like being a good soldier, right? You do what you do not to expect praise for it. You do what you do because it's the right thing. Any praise obviously is nice, but I think that charity is in of itself about helping people in a situation that need it, not about holding it over somebody's head or holding it over society's head. So as far as like when it comes to charity, what I guess I could ask you what your favorite charities are. But as far as like how much you give or what you give, if you're able to give, if you want to share those kind of stories, you may, but I won't hold you to it. Anyways, I'm going to get the hop out of here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next review in a week or so. Thank you very much.